So I'm going to be trying to combine two opposite styles of art. This is the art that I normally do. You could call it contemporary, you could call it mid-century modern, but this is the style of art that my wife likes. The classic, like impressionism, Victorian, whatever you want to call it. She really loves this style of art. So I wanted to build a piece of art that mixes the two styles. My idea is to structure it like I structure my pieces of art, but the subject and the colors is going to be more like this style of art. And after I build the piece of art, I'm going to try and build a frame for it, because all these pieces of art have really intricate frames. I'm going to try and build a cool frame, which is a big ask for me. I always do very minimal frames. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tricky. I think we can come up with something cool. So let's get started. So me and my wife were brainstorming a couple ideas, and we came up with the idea of a swan, because I always kind of do animals as my subjects, and a swan is the perfect animal for an art piece like this. So I drew up this swan on my iPad and I split it into 5 different layers. Each layer is going to be a layer of wood, painting them lighter and lighter as you go up. And then my idea was to do a wallpaper background to give it that like vintage look. And then, as always, do a coat of epoxy over the whole thing. I haven't decided if I want to do epoxy over just the swan or if I want to do epoxy over the background as well. And if everything goes good, I'll build a nice golden frame to finish off the piece. To start off, I have to get all of my drawings that I did on my iPad onto my wood so that I can cut all the pieces out. The tricky part is I have to get them all to the exact scale or else they won't stack together properly, and I do this using a projector. The problem is you have to do it so perfectly you can't press your marker too hard or else it'll change the image just enough to make it not to scale anymore. So I have to trace everything very lightly and make sure the board doesn't move so that everything stacks together perfectly, because if it doesn't stack together perfectly, the epoxy process is going to be much harder. Everyone was commenting telling me to get these jigsaw blades. It's a scroll saw jigsaw blade, which I didn't know existed because I was saying in the video that I needed a scroll saw. But everyone said you could get scroll saw blades for your jigsaw and it would make cutting the small pieces a lot easier and not rip up the corners. So that's what we're going to try when we cut out these pieces. pieces cut. Those jigsaw blades work amazing. They worked so much better than my other jigsaw blades. The cut is so much cleaner. I don't have to sand quite as much as I normally do. The jigsaw was like going so fast, felt like the blade was like pulling it along the line. So overall, 10 out of 10 blade. I still wish I had a scroll saw for the little pieces so that I could like maneuver it around a bit better, because it's still hard with the jigsaw, but I'm happy with how they came out. Now I'm gonna start sanding all my pieces. I just gotta sand down the face so the paint sticks to it a little bit better, and sand down the edges so the edges aren't so rough. Then I'm gonna glue all the pieces together, prime it, and then paint it. So I've been using wood glue to glue these to each other, but one of you commented and said to use the spray-on contact glue instead, because it takes like 5 seconds to dry, and it would make this a whole lot faster because it doesn't need to have any structural integrity to it. But I didn't want to get the spray everywhere, so I just got some super glue, and I figured it'll do the same thing. So I'm just gonna super glue them together. It takes 10 seconds to dry, and then once the epoxy's over it, it'll be all solid together. But right now I just need them to stay together while I paint it. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna glue the whole thing together, then we can do the primer, and then we can paint it. I still haven't decided whether or not it's better to paint all the pieces and then put it together, or to put it together then paint it. This one, as I said, I'm just gonna put it together then paint it. I think each one has its own problems, so this is the way I'm gonna do this one. I don't know why. Alright, so I let the primer dry overnight. It's a bit rough, so I'm going to sand it down, smooth it out, give it another coat, and then after that we can paint it. I'm going to be painting this one a bit different than I normally do. Normally I just paint each layer a solid color, which I'm still going to do, but I'm also going to be adding a bit of like texture and detail throughout, just to give it a bit more of that classic art vibe, rather than being so contemporary. So I'm not the best technical painter, so we'll see how that goes. So every project I debate whether I should paint the pieces before gluing them together or paint them after. For some reason it just makes sense in my brain to paint it after I glue it, because I think it'll end up being smoother in the end, even though it probably takes quite a bit longer. But everyone who's commented about it says I should definitely be painting it before I glue it together, so I remain unsure which option is the best. I think for this one it was definitely better to paint it after because I'm adding in some extra details. But speaking of comments, I got some comments of people who are wanting to be able to buy art from me. The problem is that the art I make takes a long time to make and is expensive to make as well, and I wouldn't want to sell prints or anything just because it isn't the same. My art has a lot to do with the texture and the finish and stuff. But I did end up setting up a shop, and I'll be selling 2-foot by 2-foot art pieces that are made to order. But because of what they are, they're not cheap because of time and materials and shipping and that kind of stuff, but they'll definitely last a long time. You'll also have to wait for me to make it if you do order one, but I'll do my best to get started right away. Anyway, that's enough of that. Looks like I'm almost done painting, which means the most intimidating part is coming up: epoxy. Also, speaking of comments, someone commented that if you epoxy only one side of the wood, it ends up warping the wood over time. So I ended up sealing all my previous pieces on the back so it wouldn't do that, and I'll be sealing the back of all my future projects, but I'm not sure if it applies to my projects because I use exterior grade plywood for the back of my projects and then I build on top of that. But just in case it does, I've been sealing the back of everything just so it lasts as long as possible. So thanks for the guy who commented that. So I let the paint dry on the Swan overnight, so it's dry, it's ready for epoxy. But before we do the epoxy, I wanted to get the background done. So we're gonna do the background today. Now, if I was cool, I would just paint the background like a nice floral, like oil painting floral or something like that. But if I tried to do that, I would definitely mess it up. I decided something that would also be cool was to get like an old vintage looking wallpaper and do a wallpaper background and put the epoxy swan on that, because it's like very contrasting and it still matches that vintage classic art vibe. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And then I'm gonna do like a gold frame for the whole thing to give it that vibe as well. So that's what we're gonna do today. I think I might actually do the frame first and then do the background based off of how big I can make the frame, because I only got 2 pieces of wood for the frame and I don't know how big I can make it, and I want it as big as possible. That's my thinking. So I'm gonna make the frame right now. I'll paint it later on. Try and paint it gold, make it look good. I don't know if I can. I got like this gold spray paint. I figured I could paint like some bronze on it or something to make it look a bit more vintage. We'll have to find out how that turns out, because I'm not too confident in my ability in doing that. But let's cut the frame, see how big we want this background to be. So this is the background wallpaper I chose. I got a little bit of that green color that she likes. It's got those neutral colors, and it's like a, vintage style wallpaper, I guess. I think it'll look cool. The styles contrasting each other with the swan and this, but also still go really well together. I need to cut a little piece and test out if you can put epoxy over it, because epoxy gets hot as it cures. And I don't know if that's gonna like mess up this stuff, because this stuff doesn't seem like it can withstand heat very well. I think we are good to go to put this on the background. Try and line it up so it looks like it's not in 3 separate pieces. Wish me luck. Yesterday I poured epoxy over my little test piece to make sure that the heat of the epoxy wouldn't peel up the wallpaper, and it turned out good. So it didn't affect it. I thought it would, because epoxy gets really hot when it's curing, but that's good news, because now we can do epoxy over the whole thing rather than just doing epoxy over just the swan and leaving the background. And I think that'll make the whole thing look a lot more cohesive. So yeah, I just got everything ready to go to do epoxy right now. I'm a bit nervous because this piece seems a little bit different. There's a lot of flat area that I have to make sure it's nice and level, and it's just like a nicer piece, you could say. There's not a lot of room for error, so I want it to look really nice, really smooth. Can't mess this up. And then after it's cured, after it's dry and everything, then we can put the frame on that we made and hang it up. Here we go, epoxy time. For everyone that's been concerned about me doing epoxy without a mask or gloves, I got some protection, so now I can be safe. hear me out. So I went to Michael's yesterday. I got some epoxy from there, which I did not know Michael's had so much epoxy options. But I got some epoxy so that I can do the second coat because I ran out. But I was thinking it would be cool, since I'm going to do another coat, if I painted on top of this first coat some flowers that matched the flowers in the background, just to kind of give it a multi-layer effect. If you watched the video where I surprised my wife with an art piece from one of her favorite books, I did this with the fire in the background and it turned out really cool. So I was thinking it would be really cool if I did that with this one and I just did a couple flowers here and there on the background, make it a little bit more interesting because the background is really flat. That's just how it is. But I gotta sand everything down with like a really fine sandpaper just so that the second coat sticks and so that the paint sticks. Then we'll paint our flowers, then we can do the second coat. Hopefully I don't mess it up, because that would really suck if one of my flowers ended up bad. Luckily flowers are pretty forgiving to paint, so I think we'll be fine. Alright, now that I got the flowers all painted and everything, we can do the second coat of epoxy. I went to Michael's. It's the only place that you can get epoxy around here. I think it was like 40 bucks, but it's UV protectant, so it won't yellow or anything like that. Never get the normal epoxy because it yellows really bad. But I got this one. Hopefully it's enough to cover this whole thing, but I think we can make it work. Let's find out. While we wait, I'm going to start the frame. I'm going to be framing it in this wood. I already got these pieces mitered, but I glued it to another piece like that so that it's a little bit thicker. I'll sand it down, make it look like it's one piece of wood. I just wanted it to have a lip right here so that I can put the art piece inside that lip and it'll make it look nice and finished, and it'll frame it really nicely, make it look really clean. But we're going to be painting it gold. Now, I don't want to look cheesy, so I'm going to paint it gold and then like try and get like a bronze paint and paint it so that it looks like an aged brushed gold or something like that. It's going to be really tricky, but it kind of has to be a gold frame because that's just the look. I'm pretty nervous for this part, but at least we can redo it if we mess it up. We can just spray paint over it again and restart. Alright, I finished up the piece, I attached the frame to it. The frame makes it look so good. I'm so happy with how it turned out. You can't really tell on camera, but I added a lot of little details and shading to the swan, to the different pieces of the swan. So you can't really see that, but it still looks cool. So, time to finally show you. Here it is.